Welcome back to Chapter 7, Part 2. The main ideas in this lesson are going to be the algorithm, functional fixedness, mental set, and opening up on the big area language. Problem solving is very similar to decision making, and it can be done with an algorithm, which we'll define as a systematic step-by-step procedure that guarantees a solution. The advantage of an algorithm compared to a heuristic is that it's always right. But there is a disadvantage, and the disadvantage is that it may be very slow. Your math professor teaches you algorithms called formulas to solve mathematical problems, and it'll work every time if you follow the steps correctly. Here's an example of an algorithm compared to heuristics in your daily life. You have misplaced your phone. Yikes. Now let's assume for the purpose of our discussion that the phone is exactly where you left it. Nobody's stolen it. What would be the shortcut heuristic that might quickly solve this problem? Well, you could use a representativeness heuristic based on past experience and call the number to see if anybody answers. And if they do, problem solved. That was quick. You could use an availability heuristic and go to the last place you remember visiting, and if you find it, problem solved. That would be quick too. However, you've done 2 or even 3 heuristics, and none of those heuristics have worked out for you. But you've not wasted a lot of time in the process either. What would be an algorithm that will guarantee you a solution to the problem of where is my phone? It would be to retrace your steps and visit every place that you went to, and sooner or later, you're going to find the phone. Problem solved. Now, most of us, when it comes to decision making and problem solving, really prefer to use heuristics because it doesn't take much time. And if all else fails, to use an algorithm such as maybe reading the instructional manual of this gentleman here. A difficulty in decision making and problem solving that occasionally surfaces is called functional fixedness. And we're going to define that as the failure to use familiar objects in novel ways to solve problems because of a tendency to view those objects only in terms of their customary functions. And here's an example that I think we can all relate to. The problem is you're bothered by a pesky fly, but you have no fly swatter, unlike our picture here. If you're overwhelmed with functional fixedness, you might just stand there and say, woe is me. You have to think outside the box and brainstorm ways to overcome functional fixedness. One option might be to roll up a newspaper and try to swat the fly that way. Another option would be to sneak up on the fly if he's sitting on a table or flat surface and drop a heavy book on top of it. That's the way I go. Point is, you have to relax and be creative. Another problem that can creep up in problem solving is called mental set, and we're going to define this as the tendency to apply a familiar strategy to the solution of a problem without carefully considering the special requirements of that problem. You may have a method, for example, that works just fine for doing something, say, on the computer, and despite the occasional frustration, you cling to the same old method, even though a new approach might be much more efficient. You have a mental set that does not free you up to explore new and better ways to do the same old task. Well, that's all for cognition. Let's move on to language. Language is defined as a means of communicating thoughts and feelings using a system of socially shared, arbitrary symbols including sounds, signs, or written symbols arranged according to rules of grammar. Language has several components, including phonemes, morphemes, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. Now I'm going to give a definition of each one of these and illustrate them. Phonemes are the smallest units of sound in a spoken language. For example, the word cat consists of 3 phonemes. Ka, a, ta. Cat. Morphemes are the smallest units of meaning in a language. For example, the word social consists of several phonemes, but it has just one morpheme, meaning to be with people. The prefix anti is a morpheme that generally means not. The word antisocial consists of several phonemes now, but has 2 morphemes, anti and social, meaning not concerned with people. Syntax is defined as the aspect of grammar that specifies the rules for arranging and combining words to form phrases and sentences. Actually, for our purposes, syntax and grammar is essentially the same thing. We use those words interchangeably. But the rules of grammar can differ markedly from one language to another and makes things interesting. For example, in English we say the White House. In English, the adjective comes before the noun. But in Spanish, we would say La Casa Blanca, because in Spanish, the adjective comes after the noun. That's a rule of grammar. To put it anywhere else could change the meaning, or it could result in nonsense. So we don't do that. This is one of the challenges in learning a foreign language and learning a second language. Semantics refers to the meaning or the study of meaning derived from morphemes, words, and sentences. And this includes when words are not meant to be taken literally, but have a figurative expression. For example, and semantics can be especially puzzling to someone learning a new language, and it can result in humorous consequences. For example, if I said, "Hey, let's get on the ball," a native English speaker immediately understands this to mean, let's get started, let's get to work. But someone learning English as a second language might look around and say, "What ball? You want me to stand on a ball? I can't stand on a ball. What are you talking about? What do you mean?" And finally, pragmatics. We define that as the pattern of intonation and social roles associated with language. I can read this sentence in at least one of 2 ways. If I said, "Good luck with that," you know, from just by the sound of my voice, that I'm hopeful for you, I'm encouraging. But if I was to say it this way, "Good luck with that," you know I'm not at all enthusiastic and I'm pessimistic about your prospects. I said the same words but in a different tone of voice that conveyed 2 separate meanings, and that's pragmatics. Well, we've come to the end of part 2. Join us for part 3, our last segment in Chapter 7, dealing with, do animals have language? Do they communicate? And then closing out with the issue of intelligence. Hope to see you there. Bye-bye.